So we are here today with Marcia Levy, who is an early childhood specialist with over 30 years of experience, teacher at Sarah Lawrence College, also the former head at Columbus Preschool and Gym, and she has an extensive array of experiences in early childhood development and, equally importantly, experience as a mom. And what we're going to talk about a little bit is coming through the other side of that cycle. We've talked a lot about really young kids, and we're parents with a young child, and a lot of people who are going to be watching this are parents with very young children. I want to talk a little bit about the opposite side of that process and what it's like to have kids who are a little older, and how you still relate to them and enjoy them, and some of the most important things that you've learned in your journey as an educator and as a mother. So first of all, I'd like to start by saying thank you for being here.
It's a pleasure.
And I'd like to ask you what drew you to early childhood education initially? What became interesting to you?
Well, I cared for children who actually lost their mother in a car accident. And as a result of caring for those children, originally I was going to teach older children. I decided that it just felt so powerful working with younger children. And so that's really how it all started. And I was a teenager at the time. So I decided very early on that working with young children was the way I wanted to go.
Right. Wow, that's a powerful bit of your past that I didn't know about.
Yes.
So that's what started it all, and that's when you were a teenager.
Yes.
And then, so at that point, you knew that you wanted to get into early childhood education, and you pursued a degree in that? Yes,
I pursued an early childhood ed degree as in college, and then a graduate degree in child development, and taught. This is actually my 38th year in early childhood education, so it's been a very long time.
38th year?
38th year.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yes.
Along the route, going back, how did your experience and daily work with kids factor into your own life as a mother?
Well, I knew very early on that I wanted to be a parent when I was young, and I had my first child when I was rather young. And having an early childhood education degree was actually very helpful in terms of parenting. It was absolutely a good support. And being a parent has been the most important thing in my life. As much as being an early childhood specialist is a passion, and I've loved it all this time, but I have 3 grown sons, and that's really the most important work I've ever done.
Right.
The hardest and the most important.
Of course, right. How old are they?
My oldest is 34. He's just engaged. He's getting married soon. My second child's 29, and the youngest is 20, studying abroad in Spain right now. And so there's always a lot of excitement when the kids grow, but there's also a lot of angst.
Right. Right.
For sure.
Right, right. Well, you never stop being a mother, right?
No, not me.
And you never stop worrying. And
right, exactly.
I think somebody once told me that being a parent is like having your heart outside of your body, and you have to keep track of it and keep it healthy.
Right.
So that is kind of what it feels like. It's literally like having a piece of yourself outside of yourself.
Sure. Absolutely.
And that's why it's so daunting and so sometimes
powerful.
So powerful, and also sometimes so angst-ridden.
Yes.
Well, in that long career so far, you must have witnessed some dramatic changes in education, and specifically in early childhood education. Can you talk a little bit about maybe some of the most dramatic changes you've seen, or one or two of them?
Sure. I think one thing that's very interesting is that when I started, less mothers were working full-time. And as time has gone on, that's increased. And one of the things that was striking to me was the children whose moms worked had less separation issues when they started school. And so we're not talking, and also there was no such thing as a twos program. It started at 3, children went 2 mornings a week, at 3 and 3 mornings a week at 4. There wasn't anything more than that. My own children didn't. My oldest son went to nursery school 3 mornings a week when he was 4 years old before kindergarten, and he went to half-day kindergarten.
Right.
So there's a very, very big difference in terms of the amount of time children are in preschool these days.
Right.
It's a big piece.
Yeah, I mean, from my own experience, I grew up in a suburban community on Long Island in Levittown. Yay, Levittown. And it was a great experience growing up, but I didn't go to school at all before kindergarten.
Right.
And, and I remember it very well. I remember the blocks in there. I remember it kind of set it up as a stage. I remember they had, I just remembered I remember it very well, but I was 5 years old at that point. And it seems like we're so much more demanding of our kids. I mean, with our son, and I think it's great, I think that it ultimately empowers the child to grow more and creates a better foundation for further growth. So I'm all for it, but especially in New York City, the kids are really under a microscope.
It's very different.
It is interesting, and I think yes, there are the whole career mom movement is another big component.
Yes,
and in fact, we had Eric Messenger in today, and you can look at him in one of the other podcasts, who is the editor of New York Family Magazine.
Yes.
And one of the focuses of that magazine is on entrepreneurial mothers. So he does a lot of cover stories on heavy hitters in New York City. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, it's really very different. I mean, the expectations are different, and the children are exposed to a lot more earlier on, so that it's easier for them when they're younger. I mean, the 4-year-olds very often had separation issues. That's less common these days,
right?
Because they're used to being away and being in school earlier on and having more time, more consistency of it.
Right.
So it's a different world.
Yeah, they end up growing up faster in some ways.
Exactly.
I would love to know what you are most proud of as a mother and how you let your kids still know that you love them.
I'm very, I'd say I'm very close to my kids, and I'm most proud of them when they have overcome some kind of obstacle, something that isn't that easy for them, that they have really stuck to it and figured out a way of making something work for themselves. And I take a lot of pride in that. Also to see that they are, we're very blessed because our sons are all warm, nurturing men, and they care deeply for their family. And one of the things that's very sweet is the connection with the grandparents. My father-in-law is 98, and my mother-in-law and my father are 90. And my kids all have a really wonderful relationship with their grandparents. They really, really care about their grandparents. And that's something that was important to us as a family. And, we're lucky that as they've grown, that it's become important to them as well. And also, I would say, their relationship with each other, siblings.
Right.
So,
right.
All of that.
Do any of your sons have children yet?
No, our oldest is getting married in December, but so I haven't had that joy yet of becoming a grandmother.
Right,
so I say what I want to be when I grow up is a grandmother. That's something I've said repeatedly.
Right.
But
So
I don't know when that will be, but maybe.
Right. Well, it's kind of like a continuation of the parenting process, right?
Right, exactly.
But
easier.
But it's easier, and it doesn't have all the direct responsibilities.
Right.
So there's a different type of enjoyment, I would imagine, that goes along with that.
Right, I'd expect so.
I'd love to ask you quickly, sometimes it's, as a parent of a young child, I can say sometimes it's incredibly difficult. In fact, getting ready for this video shoot, for the live portion of it, which we recorded this past weekend, was extremely difficult because our son was running a fever for almost 7 days. We were up pretty much every night. We had to set our alarm every 4 hours so that we could get his temperature down with Tylenol and a bath if he needed it. Yet we still had to keep going and somehow persevere and get through all of it and make it look like it was all seamless.
Yes.
So I'd like for you to share a little bit of encouragement with people about what they can expect after their kids are a little older? Does it get easier, or is it still as hard as that?
It's different. I think when, certainly myself with our children, they were sick quite a bit when they were young, and it was exactly what you described, being up at night, having to go into work the next day, being exhausted, feeling almost that you couldn't appreciate the moment. But it does get easier in that regard, certainly as they get older, and they're independent, and they're doing, caring for themselves and leading their lives. What's harder is there are different phases along the way that are complicated, certainly in terms of you never stop worrying. So, that's one piece. But I love the respectful relationship that I have with my kids, so that we get into very interesting conversations, and, now that they're adults. But living in the moment when your children are very young, which I think is really such an important thing, can be very difficult, because in the moment you might be exhausted.
Right.
But as they get older, it gets certainly, in some ways it gets harder, and in other ways the joys continue and just, multiply.
Right.
So that's really, and I feel incredibly blessed because, I've got 3 great kids. So, and they, call, they say, we've got great communication, and how lucky am I, to have that. It's terrific.
Was there ever a time, like for instance, you obviously went through the preschool phase and kindergarten and all that stuff, and then adolescence hits. Can you talk briefly about what parents can expect in the adolescence phase and what goes on there, and then maybe what happens when the kids are in their early 20s,
yes,
where there's a return?
Well, I think, depending on your relationship, what you're doing now with your young child is a foundation and a building block, and it matters for later on. So I think having a relationship with the children where you try very much to really have a sense of what's happening in their lives, and no matter how much you do try, you can't certainly get all the answers, but enough where you know who their friends are, you have a sense of where they are and who they're with and what they're up to. And at the same time, you're encouraging them to figure out for themselves what's meaningful. So, for example, my youngest son was always interested in people that were having things difficult. So when he was in high school, he became the head of the soup kitchen. And he worked every week, and it was a very important piece to him. And that came from all of what you put in. You end up seeing the good pieces later, certainly. But the adolescence phase, depending on your child, depending on how old they are, and you go through periods where it's hard, and you have to know that once they come out of it, that there really is a big difference.
Right.
And then and it's really much easier, certainly, in so many ways. So that you go through periods where it's tough, and you have to know that it gets better, and try and find ways to feel the joy in it, because in terms of family activities, things that you plan together, making time for family dinners, things along those lines, they really make a difference, because it all feeds into the people that you're really raising.
Right,
So.
Right. Well, it sounds like you have a lot of love for your kids, and that they have a lot of love for you.
Yes, I'm very blessed. Absolutely. Yes.
Is there anything else that you'd like to share with parents of young children out there?
I think living in the moment can be very difficult, but myself, even when I always enjoyed the phase with a new baby, when in the middle of the night I was up for feeding and it was perfectly quiet and I could only think about the baby and that moment, and as many moments like that where you could stop the clock and just appreciate who your child is, and every stage of development is so exciting and wonderful, and knowing that they do grow up, and then you look back and it just whizzes by so quickly, and that's really how it feels. Like, I cannot believe I have 3 grown children.
Right.
At this, because it just, you blink your eye and they're grown. But when you're in the midst of it and you're exhausted and you're overtired and you've been working really hard, sometimes it's hard to appreciate those moments. And it is a lot easier to appreciate in hindsight, that's for sure.
Right.
Absolutely.
Well, we're good with selective memory as human
Yes.
beings. We can kind of alter our neural wiring a bit and look at the good stuff and kind of forget about the bad stuff, which is part of the beauty of being a human being.
Right, exactly.
Well, thank you, Marcia, so
Thank
much
you.
for being here today and
Thank
talking
you.
with us.
Great.
And I'm sure parents are going to get a lot out of what you had to say.
Great. Well, thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Have a great day, everybody.